So just recently, the United States Congress did pass the Advanced Air Mobility Act, I believe. Let me see, I'll get the exact title because I'm a lawyer and I have to be exact here. The Advanced Air Mobility Coordination and Leadership Act, okay, to be exact. And, look, I'm generally speaking a glass half empty kind of gal. If you haven't figured that out from my comments this whole entire show, so I like that there's a law, but you know what it does? It creates a working group and a report that's due like essentially 2.5 years from now. So that's the bottom line up front, everybody. I mean, I think it's a great movement forward to get people energized about advanced air mobility and all the federal agencies in a working group, essentially all the key ones. So I'll walk you through that here in a second. But let's face it, like Australia already put out their AAM strategy earlier this year, right? Europe has been actually kind of exercising it in use space. And we've now got a working group to talk about it for the next year and a half and issue a report. So there you go. So what does this thing say? It says the Undersecretary of Transportation will be a chair of this working group, by the way, the purpose of which is to plan for and coordinate efforts relating to safety, ops, infrastructure, physical security, cybersecurity, and the federal investment necessary for maturation of the AAM ecosystem in the U.S., including passenger carrying aircraft. So the Undersecretary of Transportation will be the chairperson. There's going to be one rep from Department of Trans, FAA, NASA, Commerce, DOD, Department of Defense, Department of Energy, Department of Homeland Security, U.S. Department of Agriculture, Labor, Federal Communications Commission, and others as SecTrans determines. And they're supposed to be engaging with state, local, tribal, territorial governments, the aviation industry, labor stakeholders, other stakeholders on a whole range of things I'm not going to get into. It's a big list, A through L. Do that math in letters. And they can also create advisory committees, right? So here's what they have to do. 1 year to complete a comprehensive review of a whole bunch of things. Then after that, 180 days to come up with an AAM national strategy. And in the meantime, in tandem, if you will, the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, is doing its own study under this law within the next 180 days. So this study will come out before the next, this working group report. And this is interesting because I'm a lawyer. I'm nerding out here. They're supposed to be reviewing the roles of the federal versus state, local, tribal, territorial governments in AAM. What is the state of the law? And that is the key to this. So that'll be interesting because we've been talking about navigation, all kinds of things. We were just talking about drone deck and private property ownership of infrastructure. How is all this going to play? Big issues to be grappling with, but that's what this is all about. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, Randy, because I know you follow this as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's on one level, it's exciting to see that there's a big movement forward. It's just a lot of it's like some big bites of the big issues and trying to get it all figured out within their 18-month time frame. I mean, I'm a city planner, and the whole idea of mass transit and trying to move people through and what you have to actually go through to put together a local application for a mass transit system, and the cost of that system is just an arduous process. So the rules that set that up have taken years to evolve. So you got to start somewhere. So they're going to do that to try to figure out exactly what is the actual way to make AAM work, and who are all the players and how it gets affected. But at the end of the day, it's all going to be about how many people can get transported, what does it cost per person, and how much of it's going to be borne by the federal government and how much is going to get borne by the user. So those are some big financial equations that'll have to be worked out. But I'm excited to see it get started.
Randy, and I'm going to go to Henze next. You raise a great point. Or agencies that are not on this list, when you think about multimodal transportation, right, it needs to be complementing existing transportation systems. As a city planner, I think you would agree. So where's the National Highway Transportation Safety Agency on this list? Where's I don't know, DHS does, they do work with the ports, but it seems to me there's a lot of traditional non-aviation focused transportation groups that need to absolutely be included in this. I know DOT, right? They can hopefully they'll put NHTSA into this mix because they do get a rep. But it seems to me that is key. What do you think, Henze?
So overall, I like the concept of this. I like what they're doing and kind of bringing this to the forefront because we need this legislation to match up with the innovation that some of these companies are, coming to the forefront with. The thing I don't like is that one, it's not a long enough time, in my opinion, in this little 18 months, which I'm pretty sure they can amend and probably will and push back, because there's a lot of moving parts to this whole thing. Randy brought a great point with just city planning alone, with moving people, kind of that in itself, building it out is a huge logistic type of yeah, just huge logistically to figure out, to plan out, and involve all the right agencies who move at their own pace, mind you, to
Yes.
come on board and get the plan out right, and then finding the funding and everything to get it done. 18 months just seems a little rich just to come up with the plan behind it. And then also, you start to think about the integration with the current transportation system. A lot of that is still archaic in itself, right? So we're trying to me, it almost seems like we have to end one and move into the other, but we know that's kind of hard to do. So where's that integration point? Where's that fine line between the two? We can keep all of the systems kind of moving forward in the same path, and also to have the stakeholders not lose money on this new innovative thing, and have no one use it, or we don't have the infrastructure to actually bring it out in mass like how we're thinking. Because if I'm thinking about my local grandmother or aunt that's walking to the bus to catch a bus right now, how often can those blue collar folks actually access a flying vehicle means, or have the means to pay for something like that? So you start to think about like just the financial part of it. Like, can the stakeholders even make money from it? Do we have to have an extra tax to pay for all of the infrastructure that's needed for all of this? And I think those are a lot of questions that's going to be raised in some of these meetings, and we're just going to be chasing the tail for a while until someone kind of breaks it and say, hey, we can do X, Y, Z, or roll it out in a slow plan.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. I'd
So,
like to get your thoughts too,
uh,
because Yolanka Wolf was on here talking about how for the first time, right, there was an
Yeah.
overarching transportation plan. They included advanced air mobility
And
for
well,
the
and they
first
also
time.
considered equity in that plan.
I get it.
That
So to
so
Henze's
what?
point,
Yeah. So to Hensley's point, thinking about equity, they're going to have to consider that as part of that other mandate uh, when they actually get in the meeting rooms and try to iron this out. Um, and they might be up against an economic reality on that. Actually, to get this started, we have to be flying only rich people at first. And I don't think anybody's really going to be happy with that one. The other thing, let's couch that for a second. The other thing that I think is kind of interesting here is like America is almost held back by our size on this because we do have so many more stakeholders to have to federate this plan, where you're almost like you're better off being Australia, where most of the land is not inhabited, right? You have a few cities and regions to coordinate. It's still a great effort, I'm sure, but if we're looking at timelines for why they got it done faster, I would assume that might be a huge factor. We also have one of the most complicated airspaces, and flat out, we do drag our feet here. I mean, when we look at the innovation that I saw in the drone industry when I first got started, and I've been told by people that everything that I saw at that point had already been around for 5 years, and then it took at least 7 years for the FAA to actually understand it because even the people that were interested don't have the time, and the effort was initially understaffed. and also nobody at the FAA ever got promoted by putting more birds in the sky. All those factors have kind of contributed to what seems like a glacial pace. But here's the thing, like, we're so big that once you actually do settle on a way to implement this and the technology is developed, it's going to be a huge home run. The only thing that I think is the biggest kind of risk factor for any company entering this space is, um, not that I'm an expert, but I might recommend starting in another country, flat out, just because most investors aren't going to give you money for more than 5 years. Some of these bigger companies are smart enough, like Bell, for example. That's just the first one that comes to mind. But they have a history. But if you're a startup and you want to try to get into this space, you need to probably establish elsewhere because your ramp isn't going to be long enough. 10 years, 12 years. There's no dumb money that will give that to you, that long a timeline. It's just too risky. But if you're able to get things started, and one of the best examples is Zipline, right, with their delivery system. And Matternet, right? They recently just got the type certification. So, yeah, that's kind of my hot drone industry tip for the week based on this news. If you're getting into AAM, start elsewhere.